Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play ActRaiser. In the last part, we went to Maranaha and took care of business there, and now it's time for us to head to the final region of the game, Northwall. Make sure you have the Stardust back on because it's just going to be more useful than Aura in the long run, and let's get ready for our first action stage for this area. So get this, if you're taking a look at the map, Northwall is the ice area. Big surprise, I know. Thankfully, the game doesn't exactly have full-out ice physics. You still slip and slide down inclines like we did in an earlier stage even. But not everything is going to be a slipping and sliding matter. I think the only other thing that might be in this stage is some particular ice blocks, which even then have a bit of a trick to them that you need to figure out, otherwise you're going to be taking some damage otherwise. Did I just say otherwise twice? I think I may have. And that's them. Ice blocks. Oh no, you actually do not slip and slide on them at all, but they fall when you walk off of them. They make you think that's the moment you start walking on them, but no, it's actually a trick. So you could take a cheap shot by that demon statue. You can stomp on them and you're completely fine. And they want you to know that, because it's going to come in handy during this section and this section alone. We also start to get some new enemies, namely these axe throwers. There's a couple of different colored variations of them. Some throw their axes a bit higher and such, have more HP, the general stuff. These eyes are also a very annoying enemy type, despite also not being very annoying, because they're very easy to dodge, but there's a lot of them in some of the later stages. Later on in this stage and in the next action stage. Being in this water, thankfully, does not hurt us, though, because I know some other games make this freezing water and make it hurt you. However, I think touching these spikes underwater will. I want to come over here because we get a 1-up, though this is actually one of those stages that has more than one 1-up. And in terms of the score we're going to need for this, we're not quite at the section where we need to grind it up, but we're going to need to soon anyway. Honestly, I'm going to say, though, this is another case of Ice Level having one of the best themes in the game because I love this song. It's so calming. This is the section where we're going to be doing our grinding, but not for a moment, because we want to stand here and wait for a platform to fall, in which case, this happens. We want to jump now, because up here is not only going to be, I think, an apple for health restoration, and is also where the second 1-up is, and we're going to need that second 1-up, because the area where I do the grinding in this specific section is past the checkpoint within it, so I'm going to need that extra life in order to get a good point bonus. Now we're going to need to backtrack to those platforms, in which case we actually get to the next major section. I'm kind of surprised they don't actually have you time a jump onto that, they just outright put you on it. That seems like something another Super Nintendo game would have very much done. Namely, something probably from the Mega Man series, but oh well. Either way, at this point is where the section we're going to be grinding at more or less begins. It's actually up to this little drop right here. And in terms of the score you need to get max population in Northwall, you're going to need 23,400, somewhere around there. So before we actually access the boss fight, I think I want to get around 18, 19,000, somewhere in that range. It's not the hardest thing because a lot of the enemies in these areas give like 200 or 300 points. The major thing is this little climbing section here is where you're going to want to do most of the grinding. The axe throwers are what respawn here. And since they give 200 per, that's where you're going to be getting most of your points. The demon statues are good, but they don't respawn until you die, so when you take deaths, that's what you're going to need to use. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Some of the axe throwers can also block your shots outright, which is one of the few enemies that can do that, actually. Some bosses can do it, obviously, but not many normal enemies can, off the top of my memory. Anyway, we want to destroy those enemies to the right first, but important to note is that in the case you're low on HP before the boss fight, there's a full apple right here. So quick, easy, full health restoration. Nice and dandy. And here we are right before the boss fight. However, I'm going to need to go and grind those last 8,000 or 9,000 points. And now it's time for the boss fight, which is a weird floating half-demon body. It likes to try and move right near where you are and shoot projectiles down at you. The projectiles themselves hurt, but notable, so does the splash the projectile leaves in the water. When he reaches the exact opposite side of where you are, or rather the opposite side from where he started, he'll fly up, try to charge into you, in which case he'll fly back up and start his old pattern over again. He likes to always start right in front of you so you can try to dodge into his shot, but on the whole, he's probably the hardest out of all the Act 1 bosses, yes, but compared to some of the Act 2 bosses, still not that bad. Mind you, again, Magical Stardust destroys a lot of bosses pretty quickly. And with that, we're on to our final sim section. Oh boy, that's a lot of environment tiles I have to do things about. Sir Moyle, Northwall may become a land where people can live in peace. Alright, my master, let us work towards peace. And as usual, they have something for us. Oh, master, our land Northwall is covered with snow. Please use the warmth of the sun to melt the snow. We long to see the green of the plateau. Similarly to the desert in Cassandora, you need to use one of your miracles to melt all of the snow tiles. And even then, you can't melt every snow tile. You can only melt the snow tiles that are solid, like the ones I'm melting now. Ones that have cracks, like where that northwestern monster layer is, cannot be melted at all. And this area is where I recommend bringing in your Strength of the Angels and your bombs, because the enemies we got here are red devils, which are annoying when you're going for population growth. I think there's one thing that spawns dragons, but then there are two monster layers, one there to the east and one right on this square, that house the giant skulls of earthquakiness, which, yeah, they take a lot to take out. You do want to make sure you also melt these 4 tiles here in the northeast, right where this lake is. Because for one of the things in this town, we need to do that. Thankfully, I don't think the skulls actively attack the town until there is a town, so you don't have to worry about them being too aggressive until you get aggressive on them. Except for when this happens. My master, I think I see a semblance of a lake underneath all the ice. We plan to operate a fishery here in Northwall. Thank you, my master. The people can now live here in peace. I actually am not sure if that acts as a sort of support structure. I don't think it does. But we do need to do that all the same. And with that, since I've gotten this much out of the way, we can finally direct the people. You can go after these first 2 monster layers in any order you want. I tend to go for the eastern one first, just because I want to get rid of the skulls. But getting rid of the red devils early is also a very good idea. And now's when I need to start using the Strength of Angels. Bombs are also good. In fact, I don't think I even use a bomb here, just to get some out of the way quickly. But this is a town that can be quite precarious if you're not paying too much attention or you're just kind of letting things happen. Oh, hey, a cornfield. Time to use our last of the wheat, because this is the last place we need to use it in. The fewer the support structures, the better. At least the fewer the extraneous ones. Also, I'm very glad this game actually allows you to take out red devils and such during the middle of their attack, because I know certain Super Nintendo and NES games and Genesis games wouldn't probably let you destroy an enemy when it was attacking, just because priority stuff, and that's dumb. The biggest, not gamble, but the biggest challenge about this area is trying to time yourself out well to the point where you can melt the snow, but also make sure you're directing the people at the same time. And that's 1 monster layer down, 3 to go. My master, we have found a strange bones and marrows. Oh, yay! That's going to be redundant sooner or later. Honestly, I just recommend using any items you get as soon as you get them in this place, honestly. Just because you're not going to be needing it for much longer anyway. So if you have any Strength of the Angels, use it. Any bombs, use them as soon as you need to. Also, this is me showing you that you can't melt any of the cracked ice areas for some reason. By the way, let's zap our temple. It looks a bit ugly. I am very sorry, my master, but I have kept something from you. I found a strange jewel a few days ago, but didn't offer it to you because I was so fond of it. I promise never to do anything like that again. I present this jewel to you now as an offering. Please forgive me. How you're supposed to know you can do that, I'm actually not entirely sure, but that does get you, I believe, a source of life. But, you know, the more extra lives we get, the better, I suppose. Although at this point, that's more or less just going to be for survivability's sake, as... well, we don't need score anymore, because we've reached max score. Also, I should mention, For the population for this area, the minimum is 182, because that's something I actually haven't been mentioning. For a lot of the populations I've been talking about so far, actually add 2 to them when it comes to minimums, because you need to also add the 2 that you start with. Whereas the maximum population here is 650. So theoretically, this can actually be the smallest area in terms of the amount of people within it, if you don't go for max score. Which, mind you, it's an Arctic tundra. I would expect it to be not the most populated place in the world, but it's notable, I suppose. You do need to take care of anything in the top left half of the area, though, because they can't cross the river quite yet. Either way, I believe as we put someone in the lake and they got over there, something's about to happen. Oh, Master, a scroll was found at the bottom of the cold lake. We present it to you as an offering. Please accept it. Hey, more MP is a good thing. And what the... The cold here is so harsh that people are unable to live with the ordinary clothing. Oh, Master, do you have any material with which we can make warmer clothing? Well, actually, yes we do. We got it back when we were at Itos, the sheep's fleece. The people of Northwall are now able to keep themselves much warmer. That is this area's population growth stopping event. So if you don't get that fleece from Itos, you need to go over there and make sure you got that. And if for some reason you didn't do Itos at this point, you're a brave soul for some reason who hasn't done it yet, and I don't quite understand why. Now, I don't do it here because it's technically the only case where it doesn't have to happen. But it is notable that Northwall can be the 3rd place where phantom construction happens. Oh, Master, we now understand how to build bridges. We can now begin building homes over the river. Cool. In the case of where the phantom construction can happen here, it's in the very southwestern corner. Like, right below the temple, even, I think. Because if you don't build, I think from the east there, the house won't have a way to go in normally. My Master, did you know that there is a large new tree growing northeast of here? The other day, 2 of us went to the mighty tree. At the trunk of the tree, we found something very interesting. There were 2 initials carved in the tree. These initials prove that people inhabited this land a few thousand years ago. We also discovered a scroll hidden near the trunk of the tree. Please accept it. Yeah, I guess this is technically us repopulating the world, not just populating it in general, isn't it? That is more MP, though, which we're going to want, because MP obviously is very useful for boss fights, let alone. But, even though I don't do what you could in the final area of the game, next part, Magical Stardust is always going to be useful, and therefore you could use more MP for that. At this point, though, Northwall, in terms of enemy variety, is one of the hardest areas in the game, yes. But compared to, say, Bloodpool and Fillmore, when you're going for max population at least, it's one of the easier sim sections in the game. Like I said before, I think when it comes to getting max population, the hardest areas in the game are Bloodpool and Fillmore. I think Fillmore is a bit more annoying because you need to be very precise before you put that one bridge. But everything after that is much easier to do, just because you don't have to worry as much about structures. You're going to need wheat to reduce the amount of fields you get, yes, but that's about it. Oh, and we reached Civ level 2. I don't know why that bridge is there, honestly, the one that goes north across the river like that. There's nothing at that mountain from what I know, so that's just kind of weird. Man, why not? Let's use that. When you get down to just the last enemy being a skull like this, honestly, there's not much you can do. Like I said, something I think this game could have used is a few more things happening in... Actually, I'm not even sure if I've said this. I always think Sin Mode in this game is good, but it needs just a little bit more going on. I love how simple it is, but there's a point where I think some complexity is needed even in simplicity. Not much, like maybe a few more random events happening, a few more enemies spawning, or enemies that are a bit more antagonistic towards you, more so than towards the people. Something minor. Helps that the strength of the angel makes waiting for this just kind of tedious. Though I will say, that is one thing, like I mentioned before, that I like about the later half of the game. Because the areas are so small, you don't need to wait as long for the people, not only in terms of them to grow, but also in terms of them getting to where the houses are, because every second they waste getting to wherever you're building houses is time that is technically wasted. Thankfully, at this point, we're almost done with the last monster layer, which means sim mode, in terms of the actual threats within it, is almost over. There's still going to be one more thing to do, technically, when it comes to getting max population, and that comes with the usual eradication of all those that are living, more or less. But that's quick. Also, this is, I think, the only other area in the game that's not named Fillmore that uses mansions as an upgraded support unit. Kind of weird, but okay. And save level is level 3. Oh, Master! A monster has appeared from the mighty tree. The mighty old tree is our symbol of Northwall. Simply gazing upon it stirs the emotions within us. Oh, Master, please save our symbol of Northwall. Come down and drive the monsters away. And with that, the location of our second action stage is revealed. It's the obvious tree on the map, but we still have to get max population first. Though at this point, we're not fast-forwarding quite yet, because we still have some minor map stuff to do. Namely, getting the last of the houses up to begin with, because that's something I do like to do in this LP, at least. Although I may have accidentally not done it right once or twice. I don't like to actually fast-forward when it comes to getting the population until after I filled out the map. Either way, as I mentioned, this is where phantom construction can happen. If you don't build to that square beneath the temple from the east, the bridge that heads to the west won't be built. And it's not needed, but if you want to get the house that can be phantom constructed right now, you want to build from the east. Because otherwise you need to leave the area, wait a few cycles, it's tedious. Even then, it's not like you'd have to wait that long to begin with. And with that, I think that's the map all filled out, so let's just wait for everyone to move around. Earthquakes, everyone. Hey, there's the house right there, actually. Thankfully, this is the last waiting we have to do, and even then, as I mentioned, this is such a smaller area to begin with that it doesn't take as long. But if we keep an eye on our population count in the top right, we're getting upwards. We're at like 4,400 right about now. But before we reach max population, one more thing is going to happen. We're actually going to reach max level. I know I mentioned it last part even that the experience points, or the population need for your levels is raised in the American version. But in terms of what you need to get max level in America, you need to reach 4,600 people. With that, we're at level 17, our HP is 24. Sir Moyle, it appears you have recovered your original strength. Max level. Though it annoys me, there's still one space between the clock and your HP. So we just need to do a little bit more waiting before we reach our max population, which you actually could have mathed out if you've been paying attention to what I've talked about the max populations being so far. Max population for ActRaiser is 4,652. Nice and dandy. It still says we're slow here in Northwall, but that's because we haven't taken down Act 2 yet. So let's actually head on back to the the Sky Palace, which we get the Source of Magic, the Source of Life, and the last spell in the game, the Magical Light. And now let's head back to the Sky Palace. Magical Light is a spell I'm actually not using in this level, by the way. As for what Magical Light does, you basically get orbital laser cannons from the Sky Palace. A giant laser concentrates on you and then spreads out around you. We'll see it next part, but for this area, I much prefer to have Magical Stardust. And if we actually look, we actually have both max lives and max MP. You can only ever have a maximum, or at least a starting maximum, of 7 lives and 7 MP. You can get up to, I think, 9 of each, if not more, just by grabbing them in the levels, yes, but it's not going to stay for long. We are a fully upgraded master. Nice. This level used to be a huge pain in my ass, though, because it's a fairly lengthy one, and there's not many checkpoints along the way, if any. Or rather, in the individual sections, I think. Because both sections of this stage are just you climbing up the trunk of this tree with a lot of enemies. I believe I mentioned earlier that my bum rush strategy for the game that I have sometimes can get me into trouble sometimes. This is where it happens usually, because there are a lot of enemies, there's a lot of shots going around you. It's very easy to get hit here. Especially if you just outright ignore some enemies and go the wrong directions at some points. You're going to get hit here a lot unless you're playing uber conservatively. And even then, that runs the risk of you running out the timer, which means death all the same. The most annoying enemy in here, though, has to be probably the one that you see the least, coincidentally. These birds, if you don't kill them, drop a worm, which loves to jump all over you. And if you're not quick, that can get pretty damaging pretty quickly. Especially on professional mode, which, as I mentioned last part... Actually, no, I don't think I mentioned this about that last part. Professional mode, I know I mentioned, is just the action stages, but you have max HP, no spells, all that sort of stuff. But enemies also do more damage. And that can be bad and get bad really quickly. As you can see in me going for this one up in full health apple, not only did I die once, I almost died a second time. If you're just being reckless, this stage can be annoying. I do recommend taking things a bit slower and try to be a bit more methodical with how you go through it. Compared to me, also, I don't like that jump. For some reason, that jump always feels uncomfortable to me. However, we're about at the halfway point of the stage, and this is where the level's gimmick changes. Essentially, now we're in Waveman / Splash Woman stages from Mega Man's 5 and 9. We need to ride the bubbles. The green bubbles are going to be your major way up because they'll hold you for longer, but they do eventually pop all the same. I think. Just ride them up, and you'll be actually up at the top of the area in pretty quick time. With that, it's boss time. And the boss for this stage is actually my favorite looking in the game, a giant ice dragon. It has 2 attacks. It'll come down from the sky and shoot out, I think, 2 or 3 little ice blocks that will break up like that, which the blocks that they break into will damage you. And it'll also just outright charge at you. If you want my overall strategy, aside from just spamming Magical Stardust, which works a lot of the time, use Magical Stardust when it charges at you, but when it's firing the balls, just try to go up and jump slash it. If you're trying to be conservative with your MP and not just spam spells. Which I know I get a bit spammy with my spells in this LP, but it's just always how I've kind of played the game. Dominant strategy is very much a thing with me, as you probably noticed throughout my my LPs. Need I mention Blood Swords in Final Fantasy II, the latter 2 areas of Final Fantasy III more or less having the same fight strategy. It can get kind of repetitive on my channel, and I openly admit that at times. But that is the last standard action stage out of the way. Northwall is clear. So what happens next? Good question. Let's let the game explain it best. When you defeated the final monster, the demon, Tandra's Island emerged from the depths of the ocean northeast of here. Tandra is underground waiting for his final battle with the Master. Alright, let's go, Sir Moyle, to the haunted land, Deathheim. With that, the final stage is now available. We're at max population, we're at max level, we have everything aside from some of the strength of angels and bombs that people have dropped throughout the game. I'm gonna equip the magical light, though. Yeah, we consume monsters with the ray of light from the Sky Palace. The orbital laser. So with that, let's save our final save of the game at that. And with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 7, we're heading to endgame, folks. See you guys then.